Welcome everyone, my name is Mr. otherwise known as Chris, and welcome to Black Ops 2. Now today I want to talk about sequels and what they can generally mean for games, and how they can be bad, sometimes how they can be good, and what a company needs to do in order to make a decent sequel that doesn't suck dick, to put it quite frankly. Now, over the years, especially with the latest generation of console, what we've seen is a lot of sequels to a lot of successful games. Sometimes they succeed and become a massively successful series, sometimes they fail miserably, and sometimes they just don't get any attention at all because the original was very bad as well. Now, a game like Call of Duty, which has had tons of sequels, I think we're on Call of Duty 10 at the moment, I'm not really sure, but soon to go into Call of Duty 11 if that is the case. What we've had in general is there's been innovation, but not enough to make each game seem that different from its previous one. I mean, Call of Duty 4 was highly successful. It brought something to the realm that hadn't really been explored too much yet. You had the multiplayer segment of the game, which was just crazy good because nothing had really came around that was that similar to that before. And then you also had a massively good, very successful single player story as well. I mean, you put those two elements together, you've got yourself a good game, especially with current generation and next generation as well, where online is highly, it's an anticipated part of the game, and so is the single player. Now, what World at War did just after that was it had the good story, it had a pretty decent multiplayer. But then they added the Nazi Zombies mode as well, which just made it even, just as successful as Call of Duty 4. And then Modern Warfare 2 came out, and Black Ops, and Modern Warfare 3, and Black Ops 2. And it's kind of where Treyarch and Infinity Ward kind of lost their way with their game, because they were just making something very similar every year and not really adding too much to the game in order to improve it. And it's because they were trying to play it safe. They didn't want to lose their top-rated shooter title. They just thought that, putting out the same thing which people love every year would be successful. Unfortunately for them, it is beginning to fail, and people are beginning to, rebel, I suppose, against this whole, the way Call of Duty works at the moment. And Call of Duty Ghosts, in all fairness, is adding a few features which are a little bit more interesting than what they've added so far. I mean, you've got a lot of people complain, they make jokes all the time about Call of Duty having dogs and the fish swimming away from you and the fog reacting to your movements through it and stuff like that. That's called bad marketing. They've marketed that game in a very bad way. They haven't thought too much about what people actually want as opposed to just trying to sound different. If they had just said that, alright, you've got all your original features from the previous game, however you also have this stuff, that would have been good. What they did instead was they tried to sound completely different from their previous games by adding what is essentially physics into the mechanics or the engine in the game. And that was where they went wrong. What they should have done is said, alright, you've got all this fast-paced shooter, you've got the fast-paced shooter that you love with all the accessibility that it had before. However, you also have customization, you also have destructible environments to a point, you can also vault over objects easier. Stuff like that makes the game sound a little bit better than, oh, we got some dogs, we got some fishes swim away from you, we got some fog that reacts to your movements. That doesn't really work that well. So that's where they failed in their marketing. However, I do feel that Call of Duty Ghosts has something a little bit more to offer than its predecessors like Black Ops 2 and Modern Warfare 3. We'll just have to see what happens when it comes out. Now, another example of a game that is generally going to go downhill because of too many sequels too often is the Assassin's Creed franchise. Now, what we saw of Assassin's Creed was the original one came out, and it was amazing in terms of its mechanics and its gameplay that it offered. However, it did lack in the way that the gameplay could get very repetitive due to the way the story was working. Now, the story was there. There were elements to that which were more interesting than a lot of other games. The whole the Animus, which you hadn't seen in the previous game before, the idea of your ancestors' memories are stored in your DNA, that was cool. You had all the artifacts of Eden, that was really cool too. And the whole end of the world plot. All very interesting stuff, and I liked it a lot. And then Assassin's Creed 2 came out, and what that did was it brought something completely new to the realm which hadn't really been seen so far. It took everything that was good about its original game, got rid of the bad stuff, and improved on all the bad stuff at the same time. And it just added so much, and the overall game was just brilliant. I've played through the game 3, maybe 4 times in its lifetime, and I've enjoyed it every single time. There's not a point in that game where I feel, oh, this is boring. And then they made Brotherhood and Revelations, which are both really decent games. They took everything that was good about Assassin's Creed 2 and improved upon it in each game, and I loved it. And then Assassin's Creed 3 came out. Now, Assassin's Creed 3 was marketed in this way in which it had new gameplay mechanics. It did. But there was one thing they did wrong. They said it in the Revolutionary War, which was awesome, but they also added this whole... In the trailers anyway, they made it look like you could run into battle and just, you know, you and your soldiers would be taking out loads of men, and that sounded awesome. You know, as an assassin, you're using all your awesome moves essentially to take out all these enemies, and in the actual game it was nothing like that. I waited the whole game for that battle, and I got to the end and I was thoroughly disappointed. And the game's not about battles, it's about story. However, that was the way they marketed it. Sounded like they had this awesome story along with that sort of stuff. That would have made the game for me if they just made the story better. Now, the gameplay lacked, as I just said. They also ruined a lot of the mechanics, because in the previous games the combat was difficult to a point. I mean, you would stand there countering and then enemies would attack you and you had to take them down, but they weren't always that easy to take down. Whereas in Assassin's Creed 3 you could literally just take on an army and not even get touched, because all you had to do was hold down a button and press a button every so often. It was really damn easy. And they ruined the game because of that. And then you also had the story as well, which for the most part, the beginning bit of the story was very interesting. It looked like they really had been taking their time with this and, you know, putting a lot of thought into what they were doing. And then the middle of the game it got to the middle of the game where you start to play as Connor, or I wouldn't say the middle actually, it was more like about a third into the game, you start to play as Connor. Now, Connor started off quite interesting. You get to see his childhood and him growing up and turning into a teenager, and then, you know, him seeing his family get killed. This is where it went downhill. His family getting killed was very much like Ezio, which is a good thing because it's a very good motivator to go against the Templars. However, he never really sounded like he was hating the Templars. It was more like he was just hating the one man who killed off his family. And that was kind of annoying, because although Ezio's family got killed, he got revenge on the guy who killed them, and then he decided he wanted to fight for this cause. He wanted to become an assassin, essentially. Whereas Connor, it didn't really feel like that. It felt like he was just wearing the robes, but not necessarily part of the creed. And that was kind of boring to watch. I mean, you're playing the game and it just didn't feel right playing as Connor. It's just sort of like, you killed my family, now I want to kill you. It's like, oh wow. And it was quite a generic plot line for the story character, but they could have developed on that in any way if they wanted to, but they didn't really want to do that, or at least that's the way it seemed. And then towards the end of the game, it felt very rushed. What started off as a very innovative, deep plot with lots of interesting elements, it kind of just turned into, like, this chapter has 2 missions, this chapter has 1 mission, and then it ended. And now the ending was the biggest problem of the game, in my opinion, because in the previous games, it left it on a cliffhanger. It kept building up this story, and it made you want to play the next game. That was the cool thing about it. You know, when you're playing the game, you get to the ending, you just sit there, you put your controller down, you just stare at the screen, you take it all in, and then when it's finished, you're like, wow, I really want to play the next one. And what they did with Assassin's Creed 3 was, it was supposed to be the ending of Desmond's story, so they should have really given him a moment and, you know, really finished his character off, whereas in the actual ending he just kind of dies. He dies after making a choice, and then you think, alright, he's dead, now what's going to happen? And this god comes out essentially, and she just says, you have played your role well, Desmond, but now it's my turn. And then it ends, and you think, what? Is that it? Where's the build up to the next one? What is going on? And the thing is, the old games left you with little information, but it was a tiny bit of information that really badly made you want to play the next game. Whereas this one, it ended with a little bit of information, the same as its predecessors, but it just did it in a very bad way, because there was nothing to look forward to. It's just kind of like, oh, your protagonist is dead, and now you've got this god who you've been seeing over the past couple of games is being released. Wow. And then, you know, that was kind of where that game went downhill for me. And now you got Assassin's Creed 4 coming along. Now, Assassin's Creed 4 does admittedly look a lot more interesting than its predecessor. However, it's got a new protagonist, so that could go badly for them if they're not careful. Edward Kenway, the protagonist within the Animus, he looks a lot more interesting. He's a character I'm interested in playing. But The issue they're having is they haven't really spoken too much about what's actually going on with the story. They've mainly concentrated on game mechanics, like the whole, you got your own ship features, which is fine, but when you got a whole game made out of that, I feel that what was a tease in the previous game, like whenever you got to do it, it was a very exciting tease to play as a pirate, essentially. Whereas in this one, it's more about that's going to be the main part of the game, which isn't such a bad thing, but it could get repetitive. So I'm interested to see how that will work out, but I'm not that interested at the same time because I want to be an assassin, not a pirate. And now if they mix them together quite nicely, it will work as a game, but we'll just have to see because it could go badly for them. I mean, I'm not going to complain about the fact that they're trying new things. That's what people want to see in games. That's what I want to see in games, but I just don't want it to fail because it means the Assassin's Creed franchise is gone. Now, another issue Ubisoft are having is they're going for yearly releases of a story-based game. That's a bad thing, and I feel that that's going to be Assassin's Creed's demise, essentially. Now, there are games that have succeeded with lots of sequels. I mean, if you look at the GTA franchise, they've got GTA the original, you got GTA 2, which was on PS1, then you got GTA 3, which that added the 3D element because it was bird's eye view prior to that. Then they had GTA San Andreas, the Vice City, sorry, then San Andreas, and then they had the other sequels as well. Now, GTA has generally succeeded not because it's bringing out the same crap every year. It's got the same premise, but it always adds on top of that. And the cool thing about GTA is it's got new places you can go. It's got new stuff within those places, new mechanics, new elements in the game. I mean, look at the difference between GTA 5 and GTA 4. There's so much difference between the two. And I imagine that they're probably going to have different multiplayers and stuff like that. And that's because Rockstar are not afraid to do something different to their predecessing game. They always take what was good about the previous one and add upon it. I mean, GTA 4 arguably lacked a few of the elements that were great about San Andreas, for example, but it added something new, which was new graphics, better damage models, new stuff to do, and it was still an all-round very enjoyable game. And I think that if companies learned from what Rockstar are doing, and they made it so that whenever they made a new game, it was innovative, it had new elements to the game and stuff like that, and actually spent a long time making it, then their games would be successful. But because companies are getting scared that they're going to do an original idea and it's not going to succeed, they're getting, they're bringing out the same games over and over again, which is kind of getting annoying. Now, Ubisoft have opted that they're going to only make games now which can have a few sequels, which people are going up against, which even I'm not a massive fan of it, but it doesn't mean that the game has got to be ongoing like Assassin's Creed where you got a yearly release. It just means that it's going to have a few sequels. So, for example, the new game coming out called Watch Dogs, they could just turn that into a trilogy, for example. I mean, look at, if you want to turn this into films, for example, look at the Dark Knight trilogy. The reason that was so successful is because each one of them was very, very good for their own reasons. But Christopher Nolan knew that he needed to end it, otherwise it would begin to get old. So the fact that he ended it on a trilogy was great, and there's nothing stopping companies who are working for Ubisoft stopping it at, say, a trilogy or a quadrilogy or something like that. And then it wouldn't be so bad. But obviously if every game was coming out on like a year or 2 yearly release, it wouldn't work out so well. And this is why I think games like Battlefield could go downhill as well, because where they're opting for like a scheduled release, it limits the amount of innovation they can put into their games. And I mean, it's not a problem having a new Battlefield game every 2 years, for example, but I wish it was every 2 years or a year and a half for a different game. So for example, they release like Bad Company, and then they release the big Battlefield game, and then they release like a World War II version or something like that. I think that would work out a little bit better for them, or they have like a different studio working on it. Now they are bringing out Star Wars, which is really going to mix things up a bit, but now the cool thing about Star Wars, actually thinking about it, is you can really innovate around Star Wars because there are so many locations you can go and so many different things you can do, but they just need to do it well, and then that will succeed as well. But the whole point of this commentary really is that too many sequels that feel too similar to the original, like the one before it, that's when games can generally start to fail. That's where companies are going to start to lose, essentially. Now, I feel that Call of Duty is not going to be going going to go downhill anytime soon. Same for Battlefield. Maybe by like Battlefield 7 or maybe 8, it might start to go downhill, but that's ages away. So you've still got at least like 4 to maybe 6 years of games, and Call of Duty I think will just last for a while until another game similar to Call of Duty comes along and takes its place. But for the most part, I feel that if, like I said, if a company's gonna make a sequel, it needs to innovate upon what was good about its original and not think about the cash too much. They need to think more about what the game's got in it. Because at the end of the day, a game sells on its features and its gameplay and what it's about. And if you feel that the game's too similar to its predecessor, you're not going to buy it. For example, this year I'm not buying FIFA because I feel although it's got new elements, it's not worth the price that it's being sold for. Essentially, it's more like DLC than anything. And I don't feel that way with Call of Duty that much. Battlefield, I definitely don't feel that way because there is a lot in the game that's new. But for the most part, like Assassin's Creed, I'm probably going to wait until that goes down in price or something because it just doesn't seem like it's worth its initial price. But yeah, like I said, sequels, if they're going to be good, they need to be innovative, they need to be different, but they need to be good in the sense that they take all the good stuff from it, what was good about their previous one. That will be how games succeed from now on. But I don't think a lot of companies are going to follow that formula, to be honest. So anyway, comment with your thoughts and opinions on everything I've spoken about. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. I've been Mustafa. Over and out.